everybody. Friday is my favorite day of the week because it means Monday is that much closer, and I get more done on Monday than any day. So, hope you all had a great time last night. I am your morning entertainment. My name's Augie Grant. I'm a professor at the University of South Carolina. I've been working with Larry and Technology Futures since 1992. Can't believe it's been that long. We do a book together called Communication Technology Update and Fundamentals. I was just talking with someone a few minutes ago about the book. It's very wide and not very deep. The idea is to introduce individual technologies in mass media, computers, consumer electronics, telephony, social media, etc. So, and we've been redoing the book every 2 years. So the idea is to give students a way to keep up. Sometimes professionals find it useful too. And if you think it might be useful to you, I got a couple copies we want to give away. So at the end, again, wait and hear what I have to say. You may decide it may not be worth anything, or you may want to run up here to grab one. I've been doing this individual presentation at this conference for about a dozen years now, and I think I have more changes this year than I ever have in any single year since we started. So I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to try not to repeat much of the way background from years ago, and I'm going to leave some time at the end for not only questions but discussions, because you probably have perspectives on all of this. I want to start out with the most ubiquitous technology. Television, we know 99% penetration. Even telephone has a penetration less than that. TV is changing. Pure and simple. The thing I would point to is the Chiefs-Dolphins game that aired on Peacock 2 weeks ago tomorrow. The fact that it was streaming only, the fact that it used 30% of the bandwidth in the U.S. during the game, that should be the number one thing that we pay attention to. The fact that it had more viewers than the previous year's playoff game, I would not attribute to the streaming. That, of course, is the competition, but the folks at Peacock and Comcast got really lucky when they chose this game. I still have memes in my social media feeds of people dancing exuberantly saying this is the Peacock executive who paid $110 million for those rights. So it's a big deal. But the reason it's such a big deal is because we've reached the tipping point that Larry identified. Now, Larry said yesterday that even though the convergence is predicted to be right in 2024, the line crossing, he said that things are slowing down, might be 6 months off, but there's no question that from a distribution perspective, television is changing. And this is not just a matter of, gosh, we've got all these new streaming channels. I mean, let's take a look at it. You know we have all of this choice. And by the way, consumers are getting increasingly frustrated and bewildered at this choice. And we're going to talk about the implications of that. But the big thing is the fact that these technologies are giving us more availability of streaming, more opportunity to stream. It's causing everybody to say, how do we stream whatever it is we're doing? Your local TV stations, and every city's got anywhere from 4 to 12. I think Dallas-Fort Worth has more local TV stations than any single market in the country. There's some great things about broadcast, but some real advantages that streaming has. So we'll take a look at that. Big thing is a fundamental change in the bandwidth requirements, that every device, when you're getting a stream, has to have its own individual connection to the server. So we see changes not only technologically, but Zumo, which was referred to yesterday, this collaborative endeavor between Charter and Comcast to put a box that, interestingly, is competitive with Roku and Chromecast and Fire Stick Still, lots of confusion, but the biggest opportunity that it presents is the opportunity to rebundle the apps. One of the, again, going back, nobody wants to try to manage 12 subscriptions. If you can get a service that bundles 12 subscriptions, then suddenly the consumer has simplicity. And that's basically what consumers want and they're willing to pay for. So Xumo, in my opinion, it's not about the box. It's not about the convenience. It's about the opportunity for Comcast and Charter to bundle all the services, sell you all those services, mark them up, and continue to get the revenue per user. So from an economic perspective, I love that Michael's in here because he will correct me if I'm wrong. The thing that's great about broadcasting is all of your cost is in reaching the first viewer. Once you have a transmitter, a program, and you're sending out that program, the marginal cost of adding additional viewers in broadcast is zero. That's the most wonderful thing about broadcast radio, broadcast television. Once we move into the streaming arena, things change. You have to have additional servers and bandwidth for each additional viewer you have. I saw this the other day, not from a broadcast stream, but my wife was trying to participate in a Zoom stream, and they had only licensed up to a certain number of streams, and I think they were a few thousand over. And she was just blocked from getting it. This is a real issue, a capacity issue. But, again, over time, Moore's Law and its corollaries affect the ability of servers to deliver multiple streams. They affect the cost of the bandwidth, et cetera. And so the marginal cost of additional streams is not zero now, but it continues to drop. And the closer it gets to zero, the more competitive streaming is for broadcast. So going back to Larry's fun graph, the reason for this crossover is not just consumer demand, it's not just content, but it is the economic reality that the marginal cost of delivering streams is dropping. Consumers are getting used to it. And oh, by the way, the streamers are saying, well, now we can do anything. Biggest development this week that my students were talking about was WWE moving on to Netflix. That to them is a really big thing. And these are people who don't have the broadcast signals. There are a couple other implications that come out of this. We know that local stations, because networks can now deliver directly to consumers, local have to focus on more local things. So your local broadcast station is going to do more news. They're going to do more local sports. The big thing is they need to continue to be an outlet for the local advertiser. Keep in mind, the function of a local TV station is not to deliver programs to audiences, it's to deliver audiences to advertisers, and the programs just fill in the gaps in between. Over the past 30 years, we've had another interesting thing where broadcasters have been able to charge cable companies and other distributors for using their signals. That's gone from 25 cents per sub per month up to about $6 per subscriber per month. When people are cutting the cord because they can go direct streaming, that money is going away. So what was a zero revenue source for broadcasters and became 20% of their revenue, or for some smaller stations 30 or 40%, that's slowly going away. For the networks are looking at delivering directly to viewers. They don't want to have to worry about local affiliates. So NBC, when we see Today and Tonight going on to Peacock, we'll know the fundamental change is taking place. It hasn't taken place yet, but it's getting there. CBS has its Paramount Plus. ABC and Disney are doing something a little different. Fox bringing up the rear. But again, this is forcing a lot more dependence on live television, broadcast and network, on live sports. So there's another wrinkle we have to look at. This is the ATSC Broadcasting Standard 3.0. 2.0 was what gave us high definition television. This came about in 2009. It's now fully diffused. Analog TV is completely gone. And as soon as we had HD TV, we had the capability to have something that went a step further. And that step further is, instead of 2.0, it's ATSC 3.0. But that's not sexy, so they're branding it as Next Gen TV. This is really cool because it allows broadcasters to deliver a 4K signal to the viewers. So broadcasters can be more competitive with the streamers who were first to deliver the 4K. You can deliver faster frame rates. You can have all these wonderful, the HDR, which is better video, enhanced audio, et cetera, et cetera. The bottom one, targeted advertising, is the big one. So this, for broadcasters, is their salvation. But I kind of equate it to when AM radio got its stereo signal. And they said, well, that's going to save AM radio from the competition from FM. And it didn't. The only thing that saved AM radio is Rush Limbaugh, and we can have that discussion another time, another place. Here's what's important. The broadcast format is rolling out nationwide at a very steady pace. I looked at the updated figures day before yesterday. 75 markets are now delivering this, and this is a totally different way to actually transmit the signal. Coincidentally, it gives us 75% of US viewers. And the Next Gen TV, we're very proud at the Consumer Electronics Show 2 weeks ago to say that they've sold 10 million devices as of the end of 2023 that are capable of receiving the signal and giving interactivity and 4K, and I assume we're all going to have whiter whites and brighter brights on all our clothing. Problem is, there are a billion TVs out there. So anybody who does the basic math can see that they've just cracked 1%. It's an invisible technology to users. It could be something that television manufacturers use to sell more TVs. But so far, the TV manufacturers are not big on it. If you go, if you went to Consumer Electronics Show, you probably saw that Next Gen TV had a booth smaller than this room, whereas LG had a booth 2 times the size of this just to show one new type of TV. Another thing I want to point out is we talk about, and this came up yesterday, what's the difference between all of these formats? And this graphic shows for full HD TV, this is the relative amount of bits you have to transmit, the amount of picture. So you can see 4K, it's 4 times as many bits, 4 times as much picture, 4 times as much detail. And if you go to 8K, that's 4 times what 4K is. So, but here's the thing. You can't see the difference unless you are literally less than 1 foot from the screen. So, 8K may be the most useless technology ever developed for everyone except Best Buy. Because when you go into Best Buy, that salesperson is going to take you up to the screen and say, look, you can't even see any dots. Let's go over the 4K, you can see the dots. Well, of course, nobody's watching the screen from 12 inches away. But if you are the type that wants to watch from 12 inches away, 8K is wonderful. It's overkill. I think back to the 1960s and high-performance automobiles, Anybody who ever drove a GTO in the 60s or drove one of those Mustangs when they came out with a Mustang Mach 1 or even a Chrysler with a Hemi engine. You wanted that 455 Hemi because that could go not 100 miles an hour, it could go 120. You could get it up to 140. Well, I have the latest Mustang, and I think my latest Mustang will also go 140. At a certain point, you don't need to go faster on the street. That's not to say that some people don't, especially here in Austin. But it's like there's some gamers who want the screens that will give the ultra high resolution. From a functional perspective, 8K is one of the most useless technologies ever created. It consumes bandwidth, it consumes energy, it's bad for the environment. You know, I would say it's going to cause fights, domestic fights in families, but having said that, TV manufacturers need something to sell. And every year they're looking for, what is it? One year it was 3D TV, and everybody was wearing goggles in front of the TV. Another year it was curved TV. So they're looking for something. They may push this or they may find something better. I think the multi-screen experience is actually a little more likely, or larger and larger screens. But that's a point I really wanted to make because, and again, next time you're in Target or Best Buy or wherever you buy your televisions, you know, actually get up as close and see where you can tell the difference. It's remarkable. Having said that, again, this is Larry's graph from last year. You can see 4K is taking off. The 8K, the question is, will it follow that path or will it fail to cross the chasm, as Jeffrey Moore tells us? So it can go a couple different directions. Here's the big thing that came out. This is a cool technology. LG introduced a transparent TV. This is a screen. When the screen is off, you see whatever is in back of it. When you turn the screen on, you can project anything. It can be a regular television signal, it can be signage, it can be whatever you want. So this transparent screen is an innovation. It has very limited application. It is very, very expensive, but it's really cool. I think we'll see a lot more use of this in signage than anything else. Anybody who wants to have high-end decor, that's a, you know, I got to use that word decor when you're doing this. This is a great tool for that. So very limited use, but of everything that came out of television in this year's Consumer Electronics Show, that's the big one. So now, we all know that we spend more time with television than almost any technology. Average consumption by adults in the US is up about 4.5 hours per day of TV consumption, and every time something new comes along, it helps increase the amount of TV. But in terms of attention, cinema disproportionately gets attention because cinema is big. You know, we might spend $2 million to $5 million to do an episode of Law and Order, but to do a movie that stars the same people in Law and Order, we're going to spend $50 million or $100 million or even more than that. So let's take a look at what's going on in cinema. We've had some big issues with traditional cinema this year. The strikes, Larry made reference to them yesterday. I don't disagree with him that this may be one of the reasons why we haven't seen a big increase in adoption of the streaming, because production of content did stop. And the fact that we simultaneously had the writer's strike and the actor's strike was a double blow to the industry. They're still recovering. I think NBC started airing new episodes last week. CBS is doing the wonderful thing, well, we've got the Super Bowl, so we're going to premiere everything after the Super Bowl and say to hell with the 2 weeks between now and then. But they've got the chance for the big, very big splash after the Super Bowl. So the strikes are over. The movies are coming out, a lot of movies that were really anticipated. Dune, $200 million spectacular for the sequel to the Dune. They're calling it Dune 2. That was delayed, not because it had to be delayed, but because none of the performers could promote the film while they were on strike. So they had to wait till the strike was over to schedule it. I mean, complex ecosystem. The cinema is rebounding. More important than the rebounding is the fact that cinema is not about going to the movie theater anymore. You're just as likely to have a movie premiere on streaming as to have it premiere in the theater. Again, we've talked about how cinema is, from a sociological perspective, the primary function of cinema is to allow a place for young people to interact, have a 2-hour experience and see if they can use that as common experience as something to build a relationship on. In courting rituals, it's wonderful. For the rest of us, sometimes we like going into the dark room with strangers and having an experience. Sometimes it's better to have that experience on our couch. But cinema streaming is just as important. And I didn't do a build here. I just said, yeah, we got to talk about Barbenheimer. More than anything else, this indicated that after the pandemic, cinema was back. And the concern was cinema, among all the entertainment industries, was hurt more during the pandemic than anything else. They literally had to shut down the theaters, and they had to rebuild. People who had habits of going to the movies lost those habits. So the question is, how do you rebuild the habitual behavior? Barbenheimer did a good thing with two very different movies coming out at the same time that a lot of people wanted to see. It brought attention. You couldn't ask for two movies that were more different. The phenomenon continues. The Oscar nominations have just been announced, and we know both have been nominated for Best Picture, although there's still the argument that Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie were robbed. They should have been nominated. So we can have that discussion at some time, someplace. So a lot of attention to cinema, a lot of excitement in the cinema. Are there any movies you're looking forward to seeing this year? Dune. Anything else? Which one? Deadpool 3. Oh, yeah. Yeah, see? This, again, from a cultural perspective, and there may even be a reboot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's some issues there. Another time, another place, we can do an analysis of what's gone wrong at Disney with that. And, of course, what went wrong with success. But here's what I want you to keep in mind. The relative revenues for cinema are minuscule. You're looking at revenues in the U.S. of between 10 and 12 billion a year, depending on what you're looking at. Globally, less than 40 billion a year. Whereas video games, VR combined, approaching 200 billion a year. Advertising industry is 700, 800 billion a year. Oh yeah, and over here is telecom, 2.5 billion a year. What John Stankey had to say in the AT&T earnings call yesterday or day before yesterday, much more important, affecting a lot more people. But what I'm hearing about is this little slice here that Margot Robbie was was robbed. She should have been nominated. So again, this is economic impact, but cultural impact is very different. All right, let's move on. Don't want to spend a lot of time on video games except to say it's huge. Again, global video game revenues, 184 billion. They dwarf many other industries, and it's getting bigger. The growth rate is not huge, up less than a percent from the previous year. But with a couple of good games, with a new console, that number is probably going to pass 200 billion this year. The big thing we want to look at is the convergence of video games and virtual reality. The idea that when you're playing a game, instead of just being on a screen in front of you, you're more immersed in a game. Huge opportunities for that. There are also the opportunities once you get into a virtual world of having fluid identities. I have very little choice standing here. You can see, gosh, he's a late 60s male with bad eyesight and obviously some insecurities that the facial hair tries to cover up. But if I create an avatar, I can be anything I want to be. I can choose a body like Arnold, or I can choose to be Barbie. Somebody made that point yesterday. Virtually, you can be anything you want. This actually changes our relationship with the media. The fact that once we get into a virtual environment, identity is fluid. You can argue whether it should be or should not be, but all you have to do is look at if you've ever seen the filters with Instagram, just as easily as I could add cat whiskers to my face or a funny hat. We could take this Zoom feed, those of you watching online, and instead of seeing a white guy holding a microphone, I could be a lion. Anything you want. Again, yeah, I see Steve nodding his head. You've tried it. You should. Yeah, there you go. Well, that takes us into the world of VR, and got to lay some groundwork for you. The biggest thing, we are less than 2 weeks, 2 weeks from, is 2 weeks? No, a week from today. God, I can't tell time. A week from today, the official release of the Apple Vision Pro. Maybe one of the biggest failures in technology to ever come since Apple's Newton. May end up being the biggest thing ever released. Here's the thing. The technology is incredible. The price is even more incredible. You're looking at $3,600 just for the device. Oh, if you want to add a case, that's more. If you want to add Apple Care, that's more. If you add all the accessories, you can easily get up close to $5,000 for one person. And there's a limited availability of apps. My feeds include a lot of snarky people, and the number one comment is, Netflix isn't even doing an app for the Vision Pro. There are about 150 apps that have been designed for the Vision Pro and others that will be adapted for it, but I think in the long run at this cost, rather than being an entertainment technology, you're going to see huge applications in corporate world, in manufacturing, in repair. The fact that any person trying to repair anything can put on one of these devices, can walk up to a device and literally have things highlighted that need to be changed or the screws that need to be untied. It cuts the training time needed for anyone using this type of AI. The Vision Pro is perfect for that. It's not as good for casual games. It's heavy. It's still tethered. It's got some other issues. I see huge military applications for this. Somebody goes into a battle, the fact that in a heads-up display they can have all kinds of information and can have sensors tracking what's going on to enhance their own vision. Again, a device like this for the military, $3,500 is cheap. So Apple will find a way to charge 10 grand. So I'm not saying sell your Apple stock, but my personal opinion is, as a consumer technology, at this point, it's too expensive and too limited in its use. But as an industrial technology, or again, let's take the military example. We look at drones. We used to think of drones as toys. Drones are the most deadly toys we have that are being operated in Ukraine and the Middle East right now. That's one way to look at it. Couple things about this. The trend, again, Meta had been very aggressive in promoting its Oculus VR, trying to get the price down below $500. They succeeded. I've seen as low as $299, trying to have a lighter display that was untethered. They succeeded in all that, and those trends in all of VR except Apple are making more user-friendly, more accessible, but still not leading to a lot of adoption. I can't see that adding in the biggest disadvantages, weight and wires, and making the price a degree of magnitude higher is going to result in massive consumer adoption. But I could be wrong. Keep in mind with any VR, anytime you're using an HMD, a head-mounted device, you have some issues of accessibility. How are you going to make it accessible for people who are visually impaired? Or any other type of physical impairment or mobility impairment? Typically, there's a 15-minute limit. If you have the HMD on for more than 15 minutes, you can become disoriented, and you're much more likely to injure yourself when you take the device off. and you have to have a dedicated space for it. I can't simply put on a thing here. I got a chair here, I've got the table here, I've got the cord. Needing that dedicated space makes a difference. Now, having said that, there's still wonderful developments. Another thing I saw this week was a floor that's been developed by the Disney Imagineers that can hook into a VR system, so you can walk and turn and feel like you're walking. You're staying in the same place. The floor is moving under you. Really cool innovation that's going to revolutionize VR, but will still require at least a 5x5 space. And finally, we see interactivity as being a predictor of use. You've got to have a critical mass. You've got to have a large enough number of users so other users will join the game, join the experience. You know, Fortnite is successful because so many people are on Fortnite, and people are used to battling each other on Fortnite or encountering each other in Fortnite. I can create a knockoff of Fortnite today that has all of the same functions, and nobody will use it unless I can find a way to get at least a few hundred people on. And once in a while, there are new games that break through. There's a brand new one that came out this week, Pal World, where they've taken characters that they're not Pokemon. They're absolutely not Pokemon. They just look like Pokemons, but it's described as Pokemon with guns. And they've gotten 7 million users in a week. The thing about the electronic space is we can scale quickly. There are economies of scale that work really, really well. Initially, Nintendo said, yeah, we looked at it. They're not copying our people. Okay, you go from 7 million to 8 million to 9 million. Suddenly, Nintendo's saying, maybe they're using our intellectual property. So it's going to be an interesting battle there. But what's amazing there, what we need to understand is the critical mass, the fact that in basically about a week, you went from very few users, social media shared the information, people started adopting and playing, and it's taken off. Nobody predicted it, least of all the group of developers who were working together, literally doing separate pieces. I read one article that said everybody was doing their own piece and they had it on a USB drive and then they put it all together. Not like the coordination you usually find in video games. So critical mass is a big thing. Video games also a big cultural factor, big economic factor. That takes us to the metaverse, the idea that we have virtual worlds that we can inhabit. We can have virtual stores, we can have virtual parties, we can have virtual conferences. It's not here yet. Facebook, the Facebook company renamed itself Meta to take advantage of the fact that they had technology that was designed to create the metaverse, and they presumed we would be spending as much time virtually as we are face-to-face. And this conference, you could kind of say as an example, we've got right here in the room, about 35, 40 people, and if I look over here online, 43 more people online. Okay, so it's about 50-50. But this type of virtual interaction is not a metaverse thing. This is one time, we're in one room that's created for this, and it goes away. The metaverse is a sustaining, continuous presence, and we don't have it yet. Instead, we have these pockets. It could be like the internet. At some point, we'll have the technology to connect all of these virtual spaces and navigate them. We're not there yet. If we go back, most of you probably go back to when you had an AOL email, a Yahoo email, and maybe a BitNet, and they couldn't communicate with each other because the interoperability wasn't there. And suddenly, when they were all interoperable and anybody could send an email to any other address, suddenly we had a very useful, very, very useful technology, of course, until spam came along. So the fact that the virtual worlds is not connected is a big thing. My question is, will they ever be connected? As long as Metaverse is driving, I don't think they will. I'm sorry, as long as Meta is driving, I don't think they will. I think there's too many corporate disagreements, too many concerns about big businesses, and frankly, antitrust issues related to Meta. So, but we'll see. It's a question. All right, so let's look on, the challenges of the metaverse. Again, why is it going to have trouble? In my opinion, again, we still have the 15-minute limit, the reluctance to use HMDs. I was thinking about this. I went to DALI and I said, what would a small 40-person technology conference look like in the metaverse? I just wanted to know what this would look like. That's what DALI thinks we are. So pretty cool. I'm going to get to that in AI in a second. Again, we need a critical mass, and there's also the issue of representation. Will we ever be required to be ourselves? Can we always add filters? Can we always be someone else? In a virtual world that is powered by AI, online you can be anything you want to be. You can be any age, you can be any gender, you can be any animal. Heck, you could be a talking tree. But you have to say more than I am Groot. It's going to provide a lot of opportunities. The whole issue that our identity is tied up in who we are physically, so as a sociological phenomenon, is going to become something that we've got to explore in more detail. But it's going to lead to a lot of bad things. If you haven't seen the news about Taylor Swift this week, has anybody not caught the news about Taylor Swift? Okay. This is the one about the number of people who are creating sexually explicit AI images of her using, it's terrible. The fact that the platforms are allowing it to be diffused is terrible. It's a violation of her, but the law, well, the law is kind of caught up. People are just breaking the law, but the ability to enforce the laws is not there. Technology is moving very fast, and again, it's hurting Taylor Swift today. So if you're a Swiftie, we got to back Taylor a little more. So, all right. Okay, metaverse predictions. There will be a metaverse, and commercial applications are going to overwhelm all others. I base this simply on that's what happened with the internet. The internet was going to be a place where we could all have our own space, and we could all communicate, and content wants to be free. You know, the internet's become the greatest driver of commerce in the world. I don't think HMDs are going to be our interface for the metaverse. I think multi-screen setups, by having multiple stacked or screens that surround you, you have much more capability than wearing a device that cuts you off from the rest of the world. And that'll get rid of the 15-minute limitation. But as it says at the bottom, we're still looking for the killer app. So, and that takes us to AI. The number one challenge we have, trying to figure out what the hell is this? There are two definitions out there. Some people think of AI as artificial intelligence. I kind of reject that because it implies a consciousness and an independence. And at least at this point, AI is not conscious and it's not dependent. It's not independent. I like the augmented intelligence because this implies a dependence. This implies a task association, and that's how AI is being applied right now. I'm using it. I wanted to save a little time making this presentation, so anytime I needed an image of something, I would go to Bing, where it's free, and it has the interface to DALI, and I would type, I need an image comparing artificial intelligence and augmented intelligence. In 2 seconds, this popped out. I didn't have to do a search. I didn't have to make a graphic. If I were to show this at a conference 4 years ago, it's, ooh, wow, Augie created something really pretty. Augie didn't create anything. That's just simply something that AI did for me. And it made it easier. I saved probably an hour or two on this presentation just when I needed an image that I didn't have. And I did this deliberately because I wanted to see how could I use AI. Certainly was not going to let it try to write my jokes. I do that myself. All right. I think there's some analogies to looking at augmented intelligence and what it's going to do in the workplace. There are people who are afraid. There are people who are afraid when computers came along. Computers are going to rule our lives. Guess what? Computers came into the workplace and they made fundamental changes. The fact that repetitive behavior required hiring someone to engage in that repetitive behavior. Let's take an example. An executive needs to send out a letter to 20 people. In 1974, that would require a typist, we usually called them secretaries at that point, to type that letter 20 times. And then the sender would have to sign all 20. That took a lot of time. Personal computers came along and we suddenly had the ability to produce that content in a fraction of the time, to customize it, and even let that executive do it themselves, freeing up either the money used to pay that person or freeing up that job position so that person could be used to do more different work to advance the company. Same thing with smartphones. Smartphones didn't just give us new ways to talk on the phone, they make us more efficient. We can be reachable anytime, anywhere. We can respond more quickly. Shadow functions, where somebody sends a message and they wait for a reply, waiting for a reply. With good instantaneous communication, anytime, anywhere communication, we can do things more quickly. Internet connectivity also gave us the ability to be more mobile. Anytime, anywhere, any content. These things increased productivity. My prediction is AI is going to do the same thing. We're going to have a lot of ups and downs. We're going to have fits and starts. We're going to have some really ugly stuff, like the Taylor Swift example. But the bottom line is, in your day-to-day job, there will be tools that you will be using 3 years from now. They're going to take the most repetitive parts of your job and make them easier. And for some of you, that's going to be a pleasure. If what you're trying to do, for example, is book a vacation, and you hate going through that, to go to your AI assistant and say, book me a vacation to Key West, 3 days, don't want to spend any more than $800. You know, could have taken you 4 or 5 hours to do all that work yourself, and maybe the best you could do is $1,200, but AI can find the right airfares, can find the right connections, can find the right hotels, and boom. And perhaps with training over time, it will put you in a slightly better accommodation than it might have booked originally. Yeah, it's going to be a huge boost to productivity, perhaps, but it's also going to mean some displacement. I look in our School of Journalism, one of our majors is public relations. The people who write press releases, who spend, hours creating a press release. AI can create that same press release in 10 seconds. You still need to add relevant quotes, you still need to add some other content, but you take a 4-hour job and it's now 1 hour. That frees up that person's time to do more of whatever they do. Or if you're really efficiency minded, it might reduce the head count. I'll leave that to you. I don't think head counts in corporate world went down significantly when we added desktop computers. We found new things for people to do. So that's my guess. Now, having said that, we have issues that we definitely need to be aware of. The first one is, as of right now, in the United States of America, you cannot copyright anything generated by AI. So that's why I was so at ease to use the AI images. I'm usually careful when I put an image into a slide deck, citing the source of it, looking at what's available, making sure I'm not like using something from Getty Images that if they find it, it'll cost me 10 grand or whatever their fee is. I have AI create it, then it's available. It's public domain. The flip side on the copyright, down at the bottom, protection of intellectual property. Generative AI has to have a database of content that it draws from to predict whatever it is you want. Right now, AI is using commonly available things on the internet, and it's resulting in some interesting things. They saw an example yesterday of somebody who ask AI to generate a photo, and what they generated was exactly the same as a copyrighted work. The program just took the work and copied it. That's bad. So what a lot of media organizations are now doing is they're creating their sites so that AI cannot crawl them. The same way you can create a site and stop a search engine from crawling the site, so that the AI cannot use the content of that site to generate its own content. And the exception to that is far right, I would put in quotes, news websites. They're all saying, oh yeah, let AI crawl us. So you're disproportionately going to get politically slanted content from AI because that's the only thing AI is being fed. So we have to realize that the underlying data sources are critical anytime you're looking at AI. You know, if I just wanted to generate press releases and I can give them 1,000 press releases, it can create a model of what a press release looks like. But if I want to create a picture of where technology is, and my only content comes from a very limited source of Eastern European media outlets, that's going to change the type of content I get. Or if I want to get an understanding, please write a position paper on the border crisis in the US, and all of my underlying information the AI gets comes from one source, that's going to color the type of content. So we do have to worry about, I jumped over safety and veracity. You know, can we actually believe what the AI says? There's the famous case of the attorney who asked AI to generate a brief. AI generated the brief. It was regarding a case of an airline cart hitting a passenger while the plane was in the air. And it generated a bunch of nonsense citations. And the attorney didn't check and submitted it to the judge. And the judge and the prosecutors checked, and they found these were bogus citations, that this case law that was being cited didn't exist, and that attorney was sanctioned. So again, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. If you feed your generative AI good information, it will give you good answers. But if the generative AI you're using is being fed nonsense, you're going to get nonsense. Quantum computing. All right. People almost never talk about this. Quantum computing is actually going to be as big as AI. It's going to be faster. It's going to be more robust. Costs are going to come down. And it's going to make AI even more powerful and scary. I said, create an image of Augie Grant using AI to illustrate quantum computing. That's not me, of course, but how the heck did it know that I had glasses and white hair and a beard? You know, thinking about getting that trailer and going into West Texas and cutting off from the world. Digital signage also gives us, this is a fake 3D sign. If you look at it, it's a curved sign, but the white box inside, that's all forced perspective. They're trying to make you think that the cat's ears are outside a box. So again, digital signage is advancing. It's a new medium. It's going to use a little bit of bandwidth. These signs all have players attached to them that are networked. Not a huge thing. They're very efficient. They're huge environmental concerns, power consumption, et cetera. And there's a danger thing with digital signage. QR code spoofing. This can happen with signage, with menus, where bad people are able to put something in your hand or have a poster that has a QR code, and you think you're going to a site, and instead they're taking you to their own dark lair. So the caution is beware of QR codes. Just look at what the actual URL is before you click on it. Internet access, we don't have to talk much about this because fixed wireless was really covered yesterday. Real important on the Internet of Things, the Matter standard is now being implemented, allowing more interoperability of things on the Internet. But the bad side is creeping up now. It's obsolescence of connections. And you have two dimensions of that. The first is briefly addressed yesterday, the idea that we have modems built into cars, modems that are built into other things. I had one on my cellular system. It stopped reporting because when I had my system installed in 2020, they put in a 2G modem. Well, of course, they shouldn't have done that, and they just said, you can buy a new one. It's only $600. Cars, my 2018 car that I sold to my son, his modem no longer works in the car. They're aging out quickly. Same thing, the older Wi-Fi connections. If we look at somebody, God forbid they're using 802.11b, you put one of those signals, it'll be interoperable with all the rest of your Wi-Fi, but because the bandwidth is limited, it's going to bring down the speed of every other device. So the fact that we have so many older devices that are using the same bandwidth, using the same services, the whole idea of being backward compatible has a cost, and when something is finally obsolete, as we have with the 2G and 3G, there's a cost to consumers. Because we know Verizon's not going to come through and say, oh yeah, we shut that down, we'll give you a new modem for free. Social media, real quick, your biggest developments. Research is showing much more that there are negative impacts on children and teens. Legislation is coming to address that. TikTok regulation is coming. Huge issues with the efficiency of advertising on social media right now. And of course, we all know that X has entered a downward spiral. We don't know if they're going to turn around or if they're going to go into an even darker abyss than they appear to be. Not going to spend any time on this. It's just different age people use different technologies. My students would never try to communicate with me on Facebook, but they'll be on Instagram. They're all on TikTok. And finally, surveillance. We have the Panoptic Society where everything you do anytime, anywhere is being watched. Again, the Ring doorbell effect, the fact that anything you're doing anytime, anywhere, if it's in public, is probably being seen by a camera. This is leading to solving a lot of crimes. It's leading to a lot of things that people thought would never be seen being seen. And I had some more fun with this. I asked Dali to give me a picture of a Ring doorbell catching a porch pirate stealing a package. And if you look closely, we have a pirate, matey. Again, just trying to do a confluence of technologies. But the fact that we're being watched anytime, anywhere could change our behavior. So I provide daily tech tidbits on Twitter at Comtech Update. They're also shared on LinkedIn and Facebook. And I'm willing to talk about any of these subjects at any time with you. My email is here. I get paid to study these things and share my thoughts, so university is very supportive of me interacting with you, and because I'll try and steal as much content from you. So we have time for about 3 questions if there are any comments or questions, either online or in person. Okay. An online comment. Yeah, anybody in the room have a question or disagreement? I don't mind. I'm not going to say I'm right about everything. I'm saying I'm asking questions, trying to be provocative, but I'm here to learn.
I have one.
Yeah, and I think Michael has one too.
I have a question just from a position of ignorance. At the beginning of the presentation, you showed the growth of, At the beginning of the presentation, you showed the growth of streaming and the decline of traditional broadcasting. And I was just wondering, where does cable fit in all of that?
That fits in the traditional broadcasting,
Okay.
because it's the linear delivery of flows versus the streaming where it's all on demand. Larry?
Yes, going to the AI example of you planning your vacation. Probably the AI is being provided by Microsoft or Meta or Google. Seems like there are all sorts of opportunities there for not just privacy invasion, but also advertisers or providers packaging that for you in their interest and not your interest.
Yes.
As the user.
Yes.
Were you?
It's like a search engine. You know, I type in a search engine. I want hotels in Key West.
Right.
First 5 things are going to be ads.
Right.
Yes, that will be there. That's where my personal prediction, I'm stretching here, I think there will be a new set of services that will be personal concierges, kind of like Alexa and Siri, only they'll be much more personal for us and we'll have more control. We might pay a monthly fee for that to minimize the impact. But if you want to get it for free, then of course the advertisers will certainly be there, yeah. And that means it's another business opportunity.
The game Power World you were talking about.
Yes.
The artists actually used AI to help design their not Pokemon creatures, and the loophole there being that the artists can see what the AI made and then do an artistic interpretation of what they saw, and then it is no longer public domain because now it is an artistic interpretation of what AI created.
Yeah, I think they would lose that case. No, if it's, I mean, it depends on the degree to which it's creative. Derivative works, there's a whole set of body of law. But you're right, Pete, they want to protect their work, but the degree to which their work, the AI is derivative. You have a derivative of a derivative work. Somebody who knows calculus, what's the derivative of a derivative? Second derivative. God, you math people are so logical.
Online,
Is
our
this-
online commenters, we're just going to read what she wrote. I think
Sure.
that's what she wanted us to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Karen said that she thought that the Google glasses would have been successful, but they weren't. She said maybe Apple marketing was in the way, in the ways you mentioned would be great for the company and their stakeholders, but for the everyday consumer, she thinks it'll have limited appeal.
I think she's right. I also think that the issue with Google Glass was the social acceptability. The price point was certainly a fraction of what the Vision Pro is, but the whole idea that wearing Google Glass you could go into any place that would be considered private and record everything going on, that was just too creepy for most people. So, and that's, again, but part of what we have to deal with, things that are really creepy to me, to my students, are, yeah, that's not a big deal. I'm not saying social mores are changing. I'm saying we need to keep an eye on whether there's an impact on social mores. So anyway, I appreciate your time. As I mentioned, all this is in the communication technology update. Got a couple copies, so the first 2 people to run up here can have one of the copies. And I thank you for your time.
Augie.